In the summer of 1177 BC, or a year close enough to it that historians argue over the decimal, not the century, the granaries of Egypt were burning, and Pharaoh Ramesses III stood on the deck of a warship that should not have needed to exist. Egypt had no navy to speak of a generation earlier. It hadn't needed one. But something was coming up the coast that no one in the Mediterranean world had a name for, and it had already erased 4 civilizations before it reached the Nile. The battle that followed, carved in astonishing detail on the walls of Ramesses' mortuary temple at Medinet Habu, is one of the only eyewitness accounts we have of the event that ended the Bronze Age. Egypt won that battle. Egypt is the reason we have a written record of it at all. Everyone else who might have written their own version was, within a few decades, no longer around to write any. This is the story of the late Bronze Age collapse, a 50-year stretch, roughly 1200 to 1150 BC, in which nearly every major civilization in the Eastern Mediterranean didn't decline, didn't gradually fade, but broke almost simultaneously in a way that professional archaeologists still argue about today. And at the center of the wreckage is a group of people the Egyptians called the Sea People, an enemy so poorly recorded that not one of them left behind a name we can confidently attach to a nation, a homeland, or a language. We know they existed because the people they destroyed described them while dying. If unsolved mysteries backed by real archaeology are why you're here, subscribe and turn on notifications. We go looking for the next one every week. To understand how strange this collapse really was, picture what existed right before it. The Eastern Mediterranean in 1200 BC wasn't a patchwork of isolated kingdoms, it was an interconnected system, arguably the first truly international economy in history. The Hittite Empire controlled most of Anatolia, a superpower that had fought Egypt to a standstill at Kadesh and signed what's usually cited as the oldest surviving peace treaty in the world. Egypt controlled the Levant and ran trade from Nubia to the Aegean. Mycenaean Greece was in its full palace economic glory, the world of Agamemnon and the Lion Gate. Administered by scribes writing in the Linear B, Cyprus supplied nearly the entire region with copper. And Ugarit, on the Syrian coast, was arguably the wealthiest small city-state on Earth, a cosmopolitan port where Egyptian, Hittite, Mycenaean, and Babylonian merchants all did business on the same dock. We know this system was interconnected because of a single shipwreck. In 1982, a Turkish sponge diver found a late Bronze Age merchant vessel off Uluburun on Turkey's southern coast, dated to roughly 1300 BC. Its cargo read like a manifest for the entire ancient world at once: 10 tons of Cypriot copper, a ton of tin from near Afghanistan, Canaanite resin jars, Egyptian gold jewelry, Baltic amber, African ivory, Nubian ebony, Mesopotamian cylinder seal, a Mycenaean sword, even a gold scarab inscribed with Queen Nefertiti's name. One ship, materials from at least 8 regions spanning thousands of miles, moving through a network that depended on every port staying open and every kingdom staying intact. And then, within the span of roughly 50 to 80 years, nearly all of it stopped. The archaeological record for this collapse is not subtle. It's a layer of destruction and abandonment so widespread that when you plot it on a map, it looks less like a series of unrelated local disasters and more like a wave moving through the region. The Hittite capital of Hattusa was destroyed and abandoned so completely that the Hittite Empire, one of the 2 superpowers of the age, simply ceases to exist in the historical record after roughly 1180 BC, not weakened, not reduced to a smaller kingdom. Gone, its archives burned, its royal line vanished from history. Ugarit, the wealthy trading hub, was burned to the ground and never resettled. Excavators found a letter in its royal archive, apparently never sent, baked hard by the very fire that destroyed the city. A message describing enemy ships attacking the coast and burning towns, ending with a desperate plea for help and a note that the city's own army and chariots were away fighting elsewhere, leaving nothing to defend it. The city burned before any answer could arrive, if one ever did. Mycenaean Greece fared no better. Every major palace, Pylos, Mycenae, Tiryns, Thebes, was destroyed within decades of each other. Pylos has its own version of Ugarit's last message, clay tablets baked and preserved by the fire that destroyed the archive, recording last-minute military preparations, including the deployment of Watchers of the Sea along the coastline. No more tablets followed. Linear B writing disappears from Greece entirely after this point. It would be over 400 years before Greeks wrote anything down again in a different script, remembering almost nothing concrete about the civilization before them, except in the mythologized form that eventually became Homer. Cyprus was hit, coastal Canaan was hit, city after city along the Levantine coast burned in succession, moving roughly north to south, as if something were advancing down the coastline, and then it reached Egypt. Egypt is the reason we can even name a suspect. Two inscriptions, one from Pharaoh Meneptah around 1207 BC, a larger one from Ramesses III around 1175 BC, record battles against a confederation Egyptian scribes called Peoples of the Sea, naming several groups within it: the Peliset, the Cheka, the Shekelesh, the Denyen, the Weshesh. Ramesses' account describes them arriving as an entire migrating civilization, not just a raiding fleet. Ox carts, women, and children, suggesting displaced populations moving by land and sea at once, having already, in his words, destroyed the lands of Hatti, Cyprus, and other kingdoms on the way south. Egypt survived. Ramesses III's forces won both a land battle in the Levant and a naval battle at the Nile Delta, the one depicted at Medinet Habu. Egyptian archers on the riverbanks and aboard ships raining arrows onto an enemy fleet shown already capsizing in the chaos of an ambush. It's one of the earliest naval battles ever recorded in detail anywhere in the world, but it was an exhausted, damaged victory. Within decades, the 20th dynasty was in serious decline, the empire in Canaan was gone, and Egypt would never again hold the international dominance it had a century earlier. So who were they? This is the part where honest historians have to say clearly that we don't fully know. And that admission is actually one of the most interesting parts of this story, because it means the mystery isn't manufactured for a video. It's a real, live disagreement inside academic archaeology. The traditional theory, dominant through much of the 20th century, treated the Sea Peoples as a fairly unified invading force. Pirates or migrating warrior confederations from the Western Mediterranean, possibly Sardinia, Sicily, or the Aegean Islands, sweeping east and south in one coordinated campaign that toppled kingdom after kingdom by sheer force. It's the cleanest story, and the one that shows up most in older textbooks. It also has real problems. There's no unified material culture linking all the named groups. Their equipment, as shown in Egyptian reliefs, looks genuinely diverse. Different helmets, different ship designs, some matching known Aegean style, others matching nothing archaeologists have confidently traced to a single origin. A newer, increasingly influential theory, associated with archaeologists like Eric Klein, treats the Sea Peoples less as the cause of the collapse and more as one symptom among several, arriving during a systems collapse already underway. This model points to independently documented evidence of severe, sustained drought across the region in exactly this window, drawn from pollen records, sediment cores, and tree ring isotope analysis, evidence that didn't exist when the older theories were first proposed. Add a documented cluster of major earthquakes in the same decades, plus internal rebellions in multiple kingdoms, and letters from both Ugarit and Hittite records describing food shortages and desperate grain shipments, and you get a different picture. Not one enemy striking a healthy empire, but empires already destabilized by famine, quake damage, and unrest, with the Sea Peoples arriving as displaced, desperate populations themselves, refugees and raiders both, pushed by the same crises, breaking the kingdoms they crashed into. Neither theory explains everything, and that's not a failure of the archaeology. It's an honest reflection of how little direct testimony survives. We have no chronicle from the Sea People's side, no king list, no captured diplomats report, nothing written by anyone claiming to belong to that confederation. Everything we know comes from the people describing their own destruction, or from the one civilization that survived to carve its victory into a temple wall, like reconstructing an entire war from only the winning general's memoirs and a handful of half-burned letters from the losing side. What we can say with real confidence, since the evidence isn't in serious dispute, is the scale of what was lost. International trade across the Eastern Mediterranean essentially stopped for generations. The sophisticated writing systems of the palace economies, Linear B in Greece, cuneiform archives in several Levantine cities, disappeared along with the institutions that trained scribes to use them. Population levels in mainland Greece, based on archaeological survey, dropped so sharply that some regions show near total depopulation for the following century. The following era, the Greek Dark Age, was in many respects simpler than what came before it. It took 3 to 4 centuries for anything resembling the previous level of political organization and long-distance trade to reappear in the Aegean. This is the detail that should genuinely unsettle you. This collapse isn't a story of civilization slowly declining the way empires usually do, worn down by pressure people could see coming. Every major power in this system believed itself permanent. Egypt had endured for well over 1,000 years. The Hittite Empire had just fought Egypt to a negotiated peace as an equal superpower decades earlier. Ugarit was, by any measure, one of the richest, most cosmopolitan trading cities on Earth. None of them had precedent for the idea that the entire interconnected system they depended on could fail everywhere at once, faster than any of them could adapt. And it did. Somewhere in the space of 2 or 3 generations, a network that took centuries to build, the kind that could put Baltic amber, Afghan tin, and a Mycenaean sword on one ship bound for Egypt, simply stopped existing and took the literate, bureaucratic civilizations that built it down with it. The mystery of exactly who the Sea Peoples were may never be fully solved. New techniques keep adding pieces. Isotope analysis of skeletal remains at some coastal sites suggests populations of mixed geographic origin, consistent with displaced or migrant groups, and ongoing excavation at sites like Ashkelon has refined the picture of Philistine material culture, which most historians now connect to the Pell set named in Egyptian records, showing Aegean-style pottery and building techniques appearing suddenly in the Levant in exactly this period. But a complete account, a homeland, a language we can read, a leader we can name the way we name Ramesses or Hattusili, may simply be gone, burned in the same fires that took Ugarit's unsent letter and Pylos' last military orders. What's left is the wreckage, still being read out of the ground 3,000 years later. A ship's cargo manifest from a world at its height, a king's desperate letter that never left the building it burned in, and the walls of an Egyptian temple still showing the one battle anyone won clearly enough to carve into stone. Everyone else who might have told their side went silent within a lifetime, and the world they built took nearly 400 years to be rebuilt by people who, by the end, barely remembered it had existed at all.